Good afternoon. Before I begin, I should probably warn you that the language is dark, as are the poems. War can't be discussed, or the aftermath of war, or the conflicts within war can't be discussed without being very honest. First of all, thank you, Director Donfried and the Institute for inviting me today, a very special day, the 70th year of the founding of the United Nations, that was devoted to peace, which is a rather, unfortunately, awkward wish when, in fact, in my lifetime, there's been wars probably every year. An earlier speaker spoke about poets as being cultural diplomats of one kind or another. I consider myself a cultural messenger, as it relates to the way I write and how I write. All cultures have poets, poems, and poetry. It's an art that for centuries has defined all cultures. Infuriating to say, our cultures also make war. Today I'll briefly explore war and its aftermath in these poems. And you might say, poetry and war, are they necessarily related? And I have to say that they don't usually go hand in hand, but poets who want to document the beauty of their culture also have to deal with its failures. And that's what I'll be leaning toward today. I'm going to begin with a poem that is based on a response to a song that many in the US and maybe internationally would know. It's called La Colombe, the Dove, originally written in French by Jacques Brel in 1959 during the French-Algerian War. Translated into English and made somberly available by singers like Joan Baez and Judy Collins here in the United States. As an epigraph to the piece, I'll read you some of the lines that provoked my title. The dove has torn her wing, so no more songs of love. We are not here to sing, we're here to kill the dove. The title of the piece is called We're Here to Sing. And unfortunately, it includes images of war. It begins with a dialogue, manufactured dialogue, between American GIs, probably in Iraq or Afghanistan. And then it goes on in 5 short sections. The first relating to lovers in the morning, and it ends with those lovers as a conclusion, almost as if love can exist in time of war, in spite of war, but it isn't going to solve the problem of war. Charlie got it first. He's walking out to take a piss and some sand nigger son of a bitch shot him in the head. Yeah, right through the eye and out the back. Just walking out to take a piss. I often wonder how I'll get it. Coming right at my face or in the back, the way James got his. Why are you talking this way, Arno? You got to believe the Sarge. He's been saying we're covered. And this will all be over in a day or two. All this hostile shit, all this hate for us. Yeah, all this hate. 1. Before the sun's light, I open my hands on your firm back, the way you say you like it, and run them down your body, the way you say you like it, and move to shape our morning the way you say you like it. 2. The culverts crossed in the rain are stuffed with slaughter, and in the desert his bones bake and hers, and by the light of a candle a letter is being written, and in the supreme city the commander-in-chief warns the world to expect more to die for his purpose. 3. On a clear day in September, I remember it was September because all the kids was marching back to school, and I felt proud to be carrying a gun in their behalf. And when I got where I was going and saw the kids we'd killed and maimed, I didn't know anymore. 4. She's seen him go off many times, and this is no different. But there is dread every time. So she puts on her best face, and hugging her son to her breast, she smiles up at the grungy window of the Amtrak starlight and waves, and holds little Jonathan's hand to wave too. And as if this is the last time she will see him, she makes the sign of the cross on herself and on the baby and in the air, and lets that be enough. After all, what is left? 5. The latest news indicates more resistance in the countryside. It may be years before all the subjects are subdued. There will be arrests and many more deaths. We will prevail. And 6. In this dim morning light, when the swallows outside our windows wing and whine and pierce the air with their hunt and cry, you too offer up your especially alluring pitch and peak. The song you sing is for us both, and we play it together and relish the urge to go beyond grief and find light between the dark. This poem was inspired during the war in Kosovo when I read about some atrocious torture. It's called You Who've Come to the Gate. You who've come to the gate will notice his skin that their fires have charred, and you will see his nose is not, but a plastic snout and wires, and his ears no longer, and no texture, but a yellow waxen shine, and you will notice her stumps where there once were hands that could sew and stir the pot and stroke a young boy's face. And you may note her silence, but will never ask, what have they done with her tongue? This year was an anniversary of the Srebrenica massacre, and this poem is divided into several sections with different dates. And the first date is July 11th, 1995, when they massacred 5,000 or more men in Srebrenica. When the guns were silent and the dead lay in piles in their common graves, there were the shooters harvesting gold teeth, rings, boots, and belts, all that remained unclaimed. And women seized, raped, and discarded, babies butchered, decimated chattel, the spoils of what we have allowed. Letter from Srebrenica. Dear Sophia, dated July 15th, 1995, about a month after the beginning of the massacre. Dear Sophia, I should have known even before the wind had shifted and the stench of flesh on fire peeled sweat from walls, from the whistling in my ears, the resonant whack of cracking spines, bodies rotting in the road. I should have hocked my gun, torched my fatigues, joined the maimed and starving for the long march out. Instead, and I tell you this with chalk, pardon me, with chalk in my mouth, I drank with the rest, took my turn in the teenage girls, forced the sons to do dog to their mothers. Yes, all this I did, and more. I should have known when my beard turned white, when men were forced to bite the balls from their brothers, when I prayed for rain to wash semen, shit, and tears to the sea. You would never take me as I was. Never kiss my eyelids with your tongue as you did. Never slip your cool hands under my shirt, press your cheek against my naked back. Never again trust me to be clean. July 11th, 2015. Today, the Serbian apparatchik appeared, not to acknowledge or appeal for justice. No. He said, never at the hands of my people, no. History lies. The Bosniaks lie. The world press lies. War is war. Expect mutilation, death, and dying. Takbir, a man in the crowd shouted. Allah Akbar, the crowd responded, repeatedly growing louder and louder and louder. And so it goes. 8,000 bodies, 8,000 and more discovered even today. Forensic crews scan skulls, teeth, and bones, attempt to fit fragments to names long lost in time, to be buried in the field of white stones, where history hovers and the jackals of war still howl as if stalking those who'd escaped or are not yet found. This I wrote a number of years ago. It was published in 1996. It's kind of the title poem called I Carry the Dead. It was inspired by the Rwanda genocide. I carry the dead child in my pack with dried fish, my canteen, and a sealed tin of plums. I carry his bloody shirt in my belt, his favorite toy, a pup he'd had since birth, over my shoulder. Its eyes jiggle and snap, its stuffing leaks, it knocks against my ribs with every step. I raised this child from his mother's arms, washed his puckered skin, combed dust from his hair, picked crusted tears from under his eyes, pearls of shit that clung in strands to his stubby legs. I bear this boy with a hunter's grace, careful to measure my stride, conserving breath, past men eating fire, past manicured lawns, past peddlers of teeth. I take this stiff corpse, no more than 1 year old, to dig his grave beyond the trees, where the people grazed sheep, honed tools, married and birthed under boughs of flowers, where a stream may, at any moment, break through polished stones. This is after Afghanistan, another war. It's called Witness. The desert whispers and the lax winds are anxious. It never stops, this nature, this inherent bartering for blood. These eyes must see beyond the ridge, the gorge, the dream, to where the rivers part, to those who come willingly and without malice, to begin and to be true. She stands at the precipice smoking a local root and weeps, calls to her mother, who is no longer, but wishes her a long life, to her father, who never buried his guns, and her brother lost beyond redemption in the sands. She will not hesitate. She will not retreat. The months of grief bear witness, attest to her commitment, to her belief in restoration. And when the hand comes from the cave to claim her, she will not go easily, will not despoil what's been bequeathed. Her years may be short or long. Who can tell? Who can ever tell? It's what she carries that matters, the script and the bones. And with war comes torture, and this piece is called What We Will Not Know of Torture. It begins with an epigraph that repeats at the end with a slight twist to it. When I first met Jamie and Beth, they were swimming in the river we called Styx. You know, the one keeps us from walking around with the dead. Well, for a while, anyway. It begins with grumbling, like the grinding of granite knobs, a hammering, a bartering of steel plates, and the crack of a whip, and bones snapping, or a slug in the jaw, and bombs, and rifle fire, and the smothered bodies sliced and diced, spit back between the iron ribs that separate those behind the screen from the rest of us. And the Klieg lights come up and into your eyes to search the back of your head for a brain unsprung. And the knuckle-wrenching climb to the wire that's wired to the generator that's wired to the dam that spikes like heroin its electric charge to the veins. And before the night begins again, there's the unmistakable bittersweet scent of shit and the rank stink of toasted flesh and the sweat of fear. And a hole is cut in the tongue of one young enough to be your granddaughter. And a thin barbed chain is dragged through that hole, and her blood is collected in an urn, and that's delivered to the priest that placed her here. And there's the smell of her roasting at the foot of the Godhead that holds success as a gift and failure as an exception. And the one who the soldiers desire is forced into the room saved for that purpose, and when you've divided her between them often and as they please, she's tossed to the hogs that surround the place. And And when it's quiet again, there's the small, wet sound of whimpering. And on the screen, an enlarged hand is displayed, while one by one its nails are extracted, and a mouth where one by one teeth are or have been. A man tethered to a chain is dragged through the slime that is the blood of his comrades, and a scissors is rammed up his ass, and another, and a cut is made, and another, and one at a time, and then by hundreds. And the cage is a door, and the door is a cage, and a wall, and the gurney is wheeled through the yard, and bodies are tossed in the pit. And the driver arrives, and the driver goes. And the kidnapped, the captured, are led away to wait for the night, and the knife, and the glare, and the wounded to crawl, and the river to rise, and the sirens to cease, and the mocking. When I last saw Jamie and Beth, they were floating in the river we all called Styx. You know, the one that's supposed to keep us from walking around with the dead and deranged for as long as we're willing, anyway. This poem was kind of an investigation of what it must have been like to be a man named Robert Bales, who was accused of war crimes in Afghanistan. It's called "You Sent Me to Kill or Be Killed." And it begins with a quote from the New York Times article, June 5th, 2013. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales, the enigmatic figure at the center of the worst American war crime in recent memory, admitted for the first time on Wednesday deliberately killing 16 Afghan civilians last year, most of them women and children. Critics of America's decade of conflict in the region seized on the stresses experienced in the war by soldiers like Sergeant Bales. It's late. Night hangs heavy in Kandahar province. Scorpions, woodlice, a mantis preys. Staff Sergeant Robert Bales injects his nightly dose of anabolic steroids, buckles up his gear. 4 tours in 10 years. No time to reminisce, no time to dream. He's careful to climb down the ladder reserved especially for him. At the bottom is the pit. Dung beetles scurry, his head throbs. You've seen your buddies' shredded bodies baking in the desert sun, babies dangling dead from barbed wire, a woman blown to clots and bone by the bomb she'd wrapped around her waist. The medic says PTSD. The lawyers say booze and drugs. Tonight, Robert dreams mayhem. Spirits of the brave and lost will cross the Devil's River. He's locked and loaded. Night goggles and high-octane wild turkey 101 proof. My enemies are everywhere. In their tents, behind their walls, in their gardens, and in their beds. They babble in tongues, sneer and wail. I need silence to think. My throat chokes on our renegade soup. There's nothing to be done. Extermination. I am the champion of justice, the avenger and the priest, locked and loaded. Bless me, Father, for I I am a missile unleashed and proud, a drone in desert camouflage. I've been sent to redeem my country's honor. I am without home, without mercy, without guilt. Pray for me as I kneel in the sand and light my torch. Nothing is left of me. I am slag. I am heroic. I am disaster. See me for what I am, what I have been trained to be. I am a machine running on fumes. Nothing matters. The mission is at hand. How many must die and why? I am marked, absurd, without guile. A bomb, fused, as intended. Poison, catastrophe. Collateral damage. It is. I am. What must be known, what must be expected. I have two more pieces. This one is called After the War. After the war, hustlers stalk the streets, hawk their mother's pearls, their sister's virginity, over and over their daughter's succulent tipped-up tits. After the war, we'll ignore our father's failed vision, picnic at midnight, pose in purple robes, ride a stallion, eat fire. On these nights, Sheila will cake her eyelids blue, dance on her back, wrap her legs around my waist, arch up, muscles tense, lick my belly, sweat. After the war, old men will tear their wives from trailer parks in Galveston or Peoria, rev up engines long left to rust, and hit the road. Kids with one foot in the gutter will step to the plate, plant their weight, and hit a home run for mom and dad, or step off the curb, or run into a cab, or climb off the top rung, or sail out into another night, unmasked, tattooed, gone. After the war, the thunder you'll hear from the hills will be just that, thunder from the hills and rain. This last piece is really about the aftermath of war, and it's going on as we speak here today. It's called Exodus to Exile. You'll recognize who's being spoken of as the poem develops. They cross fields at a dead run, still dressed in suits and housecoats, in flannel nightgowns, summer shorts and tees. They run from rape, from hunger, from exploded homes, ghosts of family dead, from a nest of bones and blood that was their last place of rest. They run to the arms of those who wave to them from pamphlets and posters, to news shows that hint at salvation, a place to resurrect, to redeem their lives in the speech and costumes of their saviors, to anyone and anywhere that will allow them entry. They are our planet's refuse, detritus, scrap, litter, waste, rubbish. The discarded of invasions, of war, of famine, of genocide, of autocracy gone mad with power. They are our relatives, born of woman as were we. From the original pair that survived as they survived. Today, if they've come this far and can still stand, they are scavenging for bits to eat, a place to safely sleep, a private place of dignity where they can defecate and urinate without fear of being cast out or shot, a place to bathe without fear of robbery or rape, a place where they might work with honor, a place where they might once again make love, think of pregnancy and birth, play with a smiling child, make plans for a future filled with hope and enlightenment, a place where they might once more learn to laugh. Thank you.